The global markets for you really under pressure, as we can see, but let's get to the top story that's developed this evening. The Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, TRAI, has closed that raging debate over net neutrality by prohibiting discriminatory tariff plans for data. Vikram.
That's right, and the TRAI chairman, R.S. Sharma, he stated quite clearly, very unequivocally, that nothing on the internet can be differentially priced, but that tariffs may be decreased in case of emergency. There are riders on this as well. Listen to what he announced.
Packets on internet, the pipes should not sort of decide. Pipes should be agnostic to the packets in the internet. So that's broadly the principle. And from a tariff perspective, this is what we have decided. We have also sort of made exceptions or exemptions in case of grave emergencies, where differential pricing could be offered in case of grave emergencies. That's what we had made that exception.
All right, just to discuss this further, those are the words really coming in from the TRAI chairman. And finally now, the step towards making net neutrality a reality as of now. To discuss this, let's bring in Rajeev Chandrasekhar, Member of Parliament of the Rajya Sabha and a vociferous advocate really of net neutrality. Great to have you with us, Mr. Chandrasekhar. You know, with this TRAI order, do give us a sense, if you are feeling vindicated, how do you see the regulator's stance and how it has been expressed as well?
No, I think there are many ways you can look at the TRAI order today. I think one important thing is that for the first time after several years, the TRAI is really beginning to wake up and take note of what the consumer of India wants, and the telecom consumer and the internet consumer. So I think this is a swinging of the pendulum away from telcos and their arguments of many years that anything that the TRAI does affects them adversely, to one now where the TRAI is confidently striding into a realm of protecting the consumer and protecting consumer rights.
Okay, so that of course is the stand you're taking, but are all the concerns that you had about the prevalence of net neutrality being addressed by what we're hearing from the TRAI?
No, not at all. I think, the TRAI has been, and I have said this in Parliament for several years now, and I've said this outside as well, the TRAI is crippled because it has very limited powers under the TRAI Act to intervene and protect the consumer. So on the overall issue of net neutrality, the TRAI can do a very limited job of addressing the issue of tariffing, because that is all the powers it has under the TRAI Act. But there are several other issues linked to net neutrality and that build up the overall definition of net neutrality, including fast lane, slow lane, data prioritization by telcos. All of these will have to be separately addressed by the government, either by way of a law or license conditions or guidelines. So there is still a second half of this drama to be played out, and the star there is going to have to be the government of India.
Well, we'll come to that point in just a moment. In fact, where exactly the onus lies. But on hindsight, how do you see the entire effort by Facebook in India to get free basics off the ground? Do you consider it stalled now? Or do you think there is more ground to cover before we can conclusively say so?
You see, Vikram, I have said this publicly. I think any effort that is made to connect the unconnected and create cheaper access to the internet is actually not a bad thing. It is a good thing for public policy and government policy to encourage that. But unfortunately, what is happening with the free basics model is that it is giving power to the telecom companies to start determining which part of the net they will provide free access to and not. This power in a set of companies that already wield so much of power is something that the TRAI, I think, are weighing the pros and cons of these two. And free basics definitely has many advantages in terms of connecting the unconnected to the internet. But if the consequence of that is to give the telecom companies this power to cableize the internet, then I think we just have to say we have to find a different way of connecting the unconnected to the internet.
And Mr. Chandrasekhar, that of course is really at the crux of this big debate. But really, to play the devil's advocate, let me ask you, how are concerns around equality and accessibility of the internet to be really addressed going forward? There are of course voices that say that the TRAI's order is really going to widen the already existing deep digital divide. What do you have to say about that?
Look, as a member of parliament, I can tell you that that should be the #1 priority for all of us, which is to get more and more Indians online to make this whole digital India dream a success. But to do it by allowing the telecom companies to start playing God on the internet is probably not the best way to do this. There are many other ways of doing it, and I think the government of India and the Department of Telecom will have to now start creating an ecosystem and a framework of policies and actions and incentives that bring more and more people online, get more and more infrastructure built out, and more people therefore connecting to the internet. So we will have to move away from just saying, oh please Mr. Telco, do this for us, to Mr. Government of India, here is the policy framework and let's just go out there and get more and more infrastructure built out that consumers can use to access the internet.
But as far as deterrence go, Mr. Chandrasekhar, how far-reaching do you see the TRAI's recommendation that a penalty of 50,000 rupees is going to be imposed for each day of flouting their order? That penalty could be a maximum of 50 lakh rupees. How do you see it?
No, Vikram, I think this is a very important milestone in the evolution of the Indian telecom and internet sector, because it is for the first time that the consumer rights issue is coming fair and center in front of a regulator, and the regulator is doing the right thing. So it is very big in terms of getting consumer rights and consumer protection onto the table as a significant issue. Now, is this the last word on it? Of course not. I think this is the first solid step. It is not a tentative step. It is a very significant step. There is a lot more that needs to be done to address both issues, maintaining the internet character of the internet as being open, accessible to everybody, not controlled by anybody, and at the other end, starting to create more and more access infrastructure that allows people to connect to the internet. These are two goals that seem very contradictory, but they are complementary, and the government's policy must address both these to happen simultaneously as opposed to having to choose one over the other.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, what do you have to say about the following? Because TRAI has put emergency services in the ambit of exceptions and differential prices, but with the rider that operators have to inform TRAI in 7 working days. Do you see that as a good framework to work within?
No, I had argued this. I am probably the only MP that has actually given in a comment and a counter comment to the TRAI. And I had argued that 0 rating to public services and emergency services that government has or government websites must be permissible. So therefore, while you have a ban on 0 rating, you must not have a ban that prevents 0 rated access to government services and emergency services. And I'm glad that the TRAI has taken note of that and has put that in the order today.
All right, and with this kind of campaign that was run by Facebook, I asked you about that, the Free Basics campaign. While you say that this is about the first concrete step in the direction of validating net neutrality completely, how alive is that battleground even as we speak right now, in your opinion?
No. I think this is a decisive step. Whenever regulation and government policy is clear and decisive, people welcome it because you don't want ambiguity. The issue of net neutrality, if you remember, was raised first by me in November 2014, 1 year and 2 months ago, and it has taken 15 months for us to get to this stage. But having got to the stage, the fact that the TRAI has ruled very decisively, saying that for the next 2 years, this is the way the internet in India will be, is a good thing. There will be people disappointed, there will be people unhappy. There will be, of course, this argument that we must allow some 0-rated products to improve access. But that is all done now because 2 years, this is not possible. And we will now have to focus on creating alternate policy methods of addressing the issue of access, and at the same time other policy methods to make sure there are no other issues of net neutrality, like I said, like prioritization of data and the fast lane, slow lane games that the telcos may play. Those are also put paid to. So in my opinion, this is a good, solid, clear, articulate step in the direction of the kind of internet that India must have. It does not address the issue of access and connecting the unconnected, but that is for a separate debate and that's for a separate set of policies to address that.
Access. Mr. Chandrasekhar, thank you so much for having been on the final word with us. So that, of course, was Rajeev Chandrasekhar, very clearly really supporting what the TRAI has come out with. He's also saying that we can look at alternative policy, perhaps just to really ensure that there's more accessibility for Indians as well. Thanks for that. Now, joining me on the other side of this debate, of course, is Sadanand Dhume. He's the President Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Mr. Dhume, welcome to the show. You, of course, have been a vocal supporter of the Free Basics platform, and you also seem to, of course, believe that limited internet access is a lot better than none. As you could just hear, we had Rajeev Chandrasekhar really talking about the fact that, why he really thinks that what the TRAI has said is correct. He's also talked about creating alternative policy methods that could create accessibility. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I have to say at the outset that I have a lot of respect for Rajeev Chandrasekhar and for his expertise on this topic. I, of course, do not come to this as a specialist on the internet per se. But I do think that this is a mistake. And I think this policy is a mistake for a very simple question, a very simple reason, which is that effectively people who have access to the full unfettered internet have decided to deny access to those less fortunate who could have had access for free, not a single rupee of the taxpayers being spent, to something less. And I think that's very unfortunate if you look at it from the point of view of someone who has no internet access, which unfortunately in India is hundreds of millions of people.
Oh, Mr. Dhume, as Rajeev was pointing out just a moment ago, would you concede as much as to say that, look, these are two separate debates. Net neutrality, as far as we understand it right now, is one debate, and access to the internet for one and all and equality over there is another debate. And there are other ways to be able to achieve that, which is something where the onus lies with the government. That's the argument being made here.
Well, I don't entirely buy that. I mean, I think that you can, of course, say that analytically you can separate them. But in this case, the two debates very clearly intersect. You have a private company that says, listen, I'm going to give people free internet. It's not costing the taxpayer a single rupee. It's not costing the government a single rupee. People are free to choose that if they want it. If they don't want it, they can go and pay for the internet just like everybody else and get access to the unfettered internet, the entire internet. Why not let people who choose to have this, choose to use Free Basics, use it? So this is, in this case, there really is, the question of net neutrality and the question of access do come together, which is the entire reason why this has been a fraught issue and why this has been in many ways a moral issue for both sides. I have a lot of respect for many of the people who've been arguing on the other side. I don't question their motivation. I think they, genuinely want the best for India. But the reason this is a moral issue is that the other side, in this case my side, does see that there is a very strong moral case for access.
Okay, Mr. Dhume, I just want to come back to what this article you've written, which is No Free Internet, Please We're Indian. And one of the things you say is that it takes extraordinary hubris to predict the future of social media. Given that, and given the fact that we are looking at something that's pretty, this is very, very tough territory to navigate. If it fundamentally comes down to giving access to the poor or those who can't afford internet access, what could be a possible solution that doesn't compromise this whole issue of neutrality?
No, but you're trying to make, that's not my position. My position is that this works. And that, the idea of a monopoly, I'm completely opposed to monopoly.
Something better than nothing.
But you should, you cannot address a monopoly preemptively. So I'm absolutely opposed to monopolies. If you find that Facebook did have some sort of monopoly over the internet, I would absolutely join anybody or any regulator in wanting to end that. But here, what you have is people preemptively worried that there may be a monopoly, which I think is quite absurd if you look at the history of social media.
But isn't that a risk? Isn't that a risk? Is that not a risk?
It is a risk that I believe has been greatly exaggerated, right? Maybe 5 years ago, I would have been worried about Orkut, or I could have been worried about MySpace, or I could have been worried about, these things move so fast. It's quite possible that Facebook would spend a lot of money on Free Basics and get not much. Companies do stupid things too. Maybe consumers benefit from the stupid things companies do. But instead, the debate in India has turned into all-knowing evil Facebook is going to control the internet. We have no evidence for that.
Have evidence for that, but this precludes the other possibilities as well. The stance that you're taking that nothing else is possible at this point in time. We need a free basics to be up and running. That seems to be the only access route as far as making sure that equality in getting access to the internet is concerned from your point of view. What is the other scenario? No, sorry, just let me finish.
That's absolutely not true. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying is that this is on the table. Judge it on its merits. Does it do more good than harm? Look at it through an Indian prism when you are looking at the lack of access that is prevalent. If somebody else comes up with some other solution, which is better, accept that too. So I'm not saying do this and this is the only way to do it. That's just completely untrue. That's not an argument I've made anywhere. What I am saying is judge this particular thing on the merits and look at it largely through the prism of access. Don't allow the great to be the enemy of the good.
The foresightedness that you require to see exactly where the internet is going right now perhaps doesn't exist as clearly as one would like at this point in time. One would have to concede that. But at the same time, but as a fundamental premise, Mr. Dhume, as a fundamental premise where net neutrality is concerned, that is something that a majority of the views that have come in seem to suggest that we need to keep that intact. Certain freedoms are inbuilt into our system. We have grown with that, and that's...
So now you're preaching this like religion. I mean, the basic point is this. Let people have the choice to choose. And it's precisely because you cannot predict it. You and I sitting here, you sitting in Bloomberg, and I sitting at the American Enterprise Institute, have absolutely no idea what the social media landscape of the world is going to look like in 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. We do not know. But the debate against free basics has been predicated on this notion that we do know. That's nonsense. We don't know, and both sides should accept that we don't know. If you don't know, then it takes away much of the argument against it.
Fair enough. That's where we'll have to leave it, Mr. Dhume. Of course, it's a debate that was raging on, but at this point in time, the TRAI has indeed gone out and put that debate at rest. At least the first real steps have been taken. We'll have to see where it goes from here when it comes to the other pending issues. When you're talking about net neutrality, Mr. Dhume, we thank you for joining us on The Final Word tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And